Hey guys, I'm Pallavi and I'm back with another book review. And today we're going to be talking about The Brotherhood of Pandora. And it is a historical fiction which is also about adventures on the sea. And who doesn't like a good pirate fiction? But this book has more to offer than just pirates. It is set in a historical world which is very true to reality, but it tries to come up with solutions to problems in a very adventurous way. The plot of the story is that the Vice President of America, Thomas Jefferson, after seeing like Napoleon's interest in the Caribbean, sends Captain Jacob May to act as a pirate and force France into selling New Orleans to America. Very interesting, right? Throughout the story, there are a lot of adventures, a lot of action, but the one thing that I liked the most was the characters and the character development. The writing is fantastic. It's written, even though it is a bit slow paced, but it is written in a way that tries to stay true to history while also creating a very entertaining story out of it. The plot moves in a way that keeps you second guessing what's going to happen next. And about the characters, I do like the protagonist Jacob, but more than Jacob, I was a fan of Lily and Miriam. I mean, in Lily and Miriam, you see like two contradictions in life. Lily, when she's introduced, her character is just, is like side candy. I don't like using that word, but that's what she was introduced as. But afterwards, when you see her character and when you get to realize that she's literally living a double life, it is very intriguing to find out about all these other facets of her character and the way the character develops. Like throughout the story, I kept getting surprised, I kept getting mesmerized by her actions, and it was amazing to read about. I felt like instead of Jacob, she was the protagonist of the story because of just the way that her actions mattered a lot more to the plot, and it was just like she needed to be in focus for it to be entertaining to me. She was my favorite character throughout the book, if you haven't guessed already. But yeah, but with Lily, like there's a completely different trajectory, and it's a complete opposite of like Miriam. So Lily is someone who doesn't want to be like weighed down by societal pressure, but on the other hand, Miriam is someone who has actually faced exploitation. So these are like two very opposite like characters who that you see the dichotomy come to life when you're reading this book. But it's not just like all boring stuff. It's like very adventurous, very action packed. Some of these scenes are like straight out of a fun comic. It could actually, like, you could actually visualize these elements in which there was this one scene in which there's a jail and you have to like fool some guards to enter a place or exit a place. I'm a bit hazy, I read this a while ago, but this, like, that one particular scene was so hilarious. It was so much fun to read about. But one thing is, like, it's very common to see in like old stories about war or like high sea adventures that there are women who dress up as men and then they just like participate in war, or sometimes they like go on to do activities which were generally considered like which generally women were prohibited from doing, or which was generally like frowned upon if a woman did it. But in case of Lily and Miriam, it's a very interesting story. Like the interactions that I'm talking about, like she is the gunman Connor, and when people find out about it, and those interactions are just like hilarious. They're so much fun. But like her character shows more than just like a female just as a man just because she wants to like live a life that's different than hers. With her, it's more about like an outward expression of her own identity. Like gunman Connor is not something that she pretends to be, it's something that she is. So that part of it was like very striking for me. It was very enlightening for me, because when you read about these stuff in history books, that there were women who were part of war, there were women who contributed just as much, but their roles have been wiped out, their contributions have not been well acknowledged. Then you realize, like, why were these women doing the stuff anyway if there was like no acknowledgement of it, if there was no glory in it? Like, why would you go to war? Why would you still want to fight for your country? So these kinds of questions that you have, I like reading characters like Lily to be able to comprehend like what could be some of the motivations behind those things. And like that is one part of this book which I really appreciated, that it does get into that understanding that dynamics that are at play that would compel you to do something like that. So yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the book, that there were so many elements which were so entertaining. And if you like close the book after you were done with it and you sat down to think, there was a lot of depth to it as well. There were themes of like societal pressures, there were themes of like love and identity that the book discussed. But more than that, the book was like, it was so much fun. It tries to portray like every single thing with such detail, especially like, because I know the author, I have interviewed him for the Straight Line, and you will find that interview on the Straight Line's website. So the author is like huge fan of boats and like reads a lot about boats. So you find that thing, that element of interest and that element of research in the book itself, with the way the boats have been described, with the way the actions have been described, with the way it's like very well researched. All the details of the book, like you can find out like facts to back that up, which was very, I mean, it felt like it was very informative to someone like me who like reads historical fiction for fun. Like I'm the kind of reader who would not care if you're as accurate to history as possible because it's historical fiction, but there are some readers who care a lot that whether or not you're accurately depicting an individual who like used to exist in real life and now you're like using their name in the book. So are you like staying true to their character the way they've been described in history? So that is something that the author really like took care of while writing this book. One aspect of it that I felt like if I could change it, I would change it, was that sometimes there were like too many details and it felt like the story was being dragged on by too many details, and it was a bit slow paced than I would have liked. Another thing was that sometimes there was like too much happening, so it got a bit like hard to follow. But three things I really appreciated was Lily and Miriam's character. Appreciated that those characters. It was so much fun to read about. Second, the plot of the story, which was very entertaining, and it kept you engaged and trying to figure out what would happen next. And third, the writing. The writing was brilliant. And I say that because like this is high praise coming from me, because I'm generally very critical of like historical fiction writers, because they tend to make a very interesting story very boring just because they get caught up in details. But this author tried to do his best, making sure that the writing was actually like catered to the reader and not the author themselves, because sometimes you have this idea that you feel like I want to be so true to this like realistic thing that happened in the world, that you forget that it's a fiction novel and it's supposed to be entertaining, it's supposed to be fun. So I'm glad that the author, when he was writing it, he made sure that the writing part of it was entertaining as well. And it was not just about it was not just about the plot itself, it was not just about the characters and checking some boxes. It was more about, will this book in the end present to a reader like some fun time? Will it make sure that the reader who ends up reading this book feels like this was worth their time? So I appreciate that. Like I mentioned, two things that I don't like was like too many details sometimes. And the other thing that I feel like was that I would have wanted to know more about the other characters who were like left behind, side characters. Most of the cases when you're reading a historical fiction, you find like these side characters are sometimes more entertaining than the protagonist, even though I haven't mentioned the protagonist at all. So Jacob, who's the protagonist, he is a very interesting character for sure. And since he's the protagonist, there's a lot weighing on his shoulder. He's like literally carrying the story on his shoulders because there's so much that he needs to manage and he needs to do at all times. But I think like Lily is a close second. With Jacob, his character has a lot of depth to it as well, and he is struggling with loss. He's struggling with different facets of not just his personality but the external circumstances and how they correlate with his internal monologue. And I found that those bits very interesting as well. To wrap it up, I feel like this book was very interesting, and if given the chance to like read it all over again, I would. if I had the time to do so. I may pick it up again sometimes. But if it had a sequel, I would definitely read it. So this was my review of the book. I really want you to just pick it up, buy it, read it, and it's going to be so much fun to discuss it if you want to. There is so many aspects of it that, sometimes when I read these books which are like not particularly popular or trendy, I want as many people to read it as possible, so there's like someone to discuss it with. Because when you read these books which are somewhat unique, somewhat like bring a fresh perspective and are very different than the general stuff that people are used to, it provokes like discussions, it provokes thoughts that I wish to share with other people as well. That's why I do these book reviews, so I make sure that you find out about these interesting gems of pieces and you read them as well and enjoy them as well. So I'll leave the link for buying this book in the description below. Do purchase it, and also do go on the website of The Straight Line to see my interview with the author. That will give you a much deeper perspective about this book, and it may compel you to buy it even more than my review did. So yeah.